Welcome to Sonara's Deep Dive.
Imagine stepping out your front door and knowing with absolute certainty that the entire world around you, the air you breathe, the ground beneath your feet, and the very matter of your body is a battlefield. And your soul is a prisoner, a priceless shard of pure, radiant light locked deep inside the chaos and corruption of the physical universe.
And this isn't some temporary struggle or a text from an omnipotent deity. This struggle is eternal, ongoing, and absolute.
Right.
This chaos you experience, this evil, is a permanent co-equal substance fighting the light for dominance since before time began.
That terrifying yet strangely elegant vision is the foundation of Manichaeism. This is a revolutionary world religion that burst onto the scene in the 3rd century CE.
And it landed right in the geopolitical epicenter of Mesopotamia, a place teeming with every major spiritual current of the ancient world. You had Greek philosophy, Jewish tradition, Iranian nationalism, nascent Christianity. It was all there.
A real melting pot.
Into this extraordinary cultural crucible stepped Mani, an Iranian prophet whose sheer intellectual ambition was, almost unparalleled.
He didn't just seek to start a new religion, did he?
No, not at all. He claimed a divine calling and a mission to unify all existing global spiritual traditions, Zoroaster, the historical Buddha, Jesus, by revealing the underlying ultimate truth behind them all.
Which would make his message instantly universal.
And instantly threatening.
For the next 1,000 years, this radical dualistic faith became a true global phenomenon. It forged a church structure so rigorous and organized that it spread across continents.
It really did. It captured the attention and ultimately the violent hostility of empires ranging from Rome and North Africa all the way across the Silk Road to the heart of Tang, China.
Yet history tends to be unkind to faiths that challenge the fundamental structure of imperial power and orthodox thought.
And Manichaeism became one of the most relentlessly persecuted world religions we know of.
So our mission in this deep dive is to trace that history. We are going to understand the precise architecture of this dualistic vision, explore how its severe asceticism functioned to liberate light particles,
and determine exactly why imperial powers feared it enough to crush it so savagely.
Right. And also see how its profound philosophy still echoes in modern thought centuries after the elect stopped preaching.
It's a journey into a sophisticated, highly intellectual faith that was for a long time lost to history until recent archaeological discoveries allowed us to hear the voices of its adherents once more.
Okay, let's unpack this. We have to start with the prophet himself, Mani. He was born around 216 CE in or near Ctesiphon, which is modern-day Iraq.
And it was strategically located under the Parthian and then the powerful Sasanian Empire. You really couldn't pick a more complex cosmopolitan corner of the world.
So that geographical setting is absolutely crucial to understanding his later syncretism.
Oh, completely. It was a crossroads where Persian cosmic dualism met Hellenistic rationalism and Jewish Christian sectarianism. But Mani was not born into a vacuum. He was raised within a very specific Jewish Christian Gnostic sect.
The LCC.
The LCCites, yes.
What defined them? We know they were categorized as rigorous legalists, but what does that look like in practice for a young Mani?
The sources emphasize their intense focus on external, ritualized purification. So think frequent ceremonial immersions, constant washing, and extremely strict legalistic dietary and conduct rules.
A lot of external rules.
A ton. The LCCites believed salvation was inextricably linked to maintaining outward physical purity.
And this focus on the external, the physical ritual, became the exact point of rebellion for Mani, didn't it? He saw all that washing as fundamentally missing the point.
Precisely. His spiritual biography is defined by a massive break from this physicalized piety. Mani argued that obsessing over cleansing the skin over external ritual was futile and even foolish.
So the true war wasn't against physical dirt.
No. The true separation of light from darkness had to occur internally within the soul. True purity for Mani was a matter of gnosis of divine knowledge and insight not of external physical discipline.
That shifts the entire center of gravity of the religion, moving salvation from the physical, observable body to the internal, esoteric mind or spirit.
It does. And this Gnostic shift laid the groundwork for his breathtaking claims about his own role.
He didn't see himself as merely another teacher or reformer.
Far from it. He considered himself an apostle of God and even the promised paraclete, a key term in Christian theology often translated as comforter or advocate, which Mani claimed for himself.
Wow. So he saw his teaching as the definitive, ultimate culmination and unification of earlier spiritual traditions.
He did. This claim demanded that he reconcile Zoroaster, the historical Buddha, and Jesus into a single comprehensive narrative.
How did he manage that integration? I mean, that's a huge task.
He framed his revelation as the seal of the prophets. He acknowledged the truth and authenticity of the traditions founded by Zoroaster, Buddha, and Jesus, but he argued that their messages were either incomplete, misunderstood, or corrupted by later followers.
And why was that? What was his reasoning?
His reasoning was their reliance on oral tradition.
And crucially, Mani emphasized a trait that he believed distinguished him from those earlier founders: his rigorous literacy and his commitment to written doctrine.
That literacy factor is paramount. Mani was highly educated, writing in both Middle Persian and Babylonian Aramaic. He believed that the previous prophets' dependence on oral dissemination, Jesus' sayings, Buddha's sermons, left their teachings vulnerable to misinterpretation and regional variations.
So his ambition was to create a fixed, written, canonical body that was universally applicable and resistant to corruption.
Exactly. This led to a massive, sophisticated literary foundation. We have remnants of his canon, the Gospel of Mani, the epistles, including the famous Epistola Fundamenti, which Augustine would later spend years refuting, and the Kephalaia, or discourses.
And we also have the Shaburagin. It's vital to remember that Mani dedicated this specific work to Shapur I, the Sasanian ruler, right?
Yes, which shows this wasn't just theology, it was political outreach. Mani was seeking immediate imperial recognition, demonstrating his belief that his faith was the true faith of the world. He was playing for the highest stakes from the very beginning.
But the element that made his doctrine truly transportable, particularly to an often illiterate ancient world, was the arjang, or the picture book. He didn't just write his doctrine, he made it visual.
This was revolutionary for a world religion at that time. Pictorial art was absolutely crucial to Mani's communication strategy.
Why, though? What made it so essential?
Because the complex cosmology, the collision of kingdoms, the creation of the demon-trapped body, is really hard to grasp just through text. Mani either commissioned or painted these images himself, creating the foundation of West Asian Manichaean pictorial art.
So what kind of images are we talking about here?
Well, they served as a form of visual catechism. These paintings depicted key cosmological scenes: the various light entities, the violent great collision, the trapping of the light particles in matter, and the processes of salvation. For an illiterate hearer, the arjang provided a direct, unforgettable understanding of the cosmic drama that textual explanation alone could not achieve.
And the power of these images endured. The later illuminated manuscripts, discovered thousands of miles away in Central Asia, specifically in the Uyghur kingdom near Turpan.
Right, they clearly copied scenes from this original pictorial work. It shows an artistic and instructional tradition that spanned over 1,000 years and multiple cultures.
It also emphasizes the critical importance of the recent recovery of primary sources, doesn't it?
Oh, absolutely. For centuries, researchers only had Christian and Zoroastrian polemics texts written specifically to destroy Manichaeism.
So we only had the word of their enemies.
Exactly. To find the Turpan texts, the Coptic works from Kelis and elsewhere in Egypt, and the fragments in China, means we can finally move past the caricature drawn by their enemies. We can now read the doctrine as it was taught by the faithful.
It's the difference between relying on the hostile biography written by a rival emperor and finding the prophet's own illustrated autobiography. Without that, we miss the depth of their metaphysical ambition. To truly appreciate the Manichaean project, we must grasp its core doctrine. Mani offered an answer to the greatest theological puzzle facing humanity, the problem of evil, or theodicy. If God is perfectly good and omnipotent, why is there suffering? The Manichaean solution is radical, terrifying, and utterly comprehensive.
The Manichaean solution provides such an elegant answer because it jettisons the idea of an omnipotent single source. It is radical dualism. Good, which is light, and evil, which is darkness, are separate, co-eternal substances. Uncreated, equally powerful, fundamental principles of existence, eternally opposed to one another.
And this is the genius of the doctrine from a philosophical standpoint. By making evil an eternal substance outside of the good creator, the supreme deity, the light entity, often referred to as the Father of greatness,
he is absolutely absolved of any responsibility for sin, imperfection, or suffering in the physical world.
It's a clean break.
It's a perfectly clean break. The light realm, ruled by the Father of greatness, is characterized purely by order, wisdom, and peace. The darkness realm, by contrast, is characterized entirely by chaos, ignorance, strife, and anger. Mani's system maintains the absolute perfection of the light God by walling him off from the impurity of matter.
But this structure meant that the universe we inhabit wasn't a planned creation, it was the result of a catastrophic accident.
The Great Collision. It was a primordial warfare. The kingdom of darkness, characterized by its chaos and inherent aggression, attacked the organized kingdom of light.
And this violent intermingling of the two substances resulted in the creation of the material universe.
Yes, which is fundamentally corrupt, precisely because it is composed of both light and dark components. It is a cosmic prison built from the wreckage of war.
And this is where we, as human beings, enter the drama. Our souls are not simply creations of God. They are believed to be scattered shards of light, divine prisoners trapped within the matter created by that collision.
We are pieces of the divine trapped in an anti-divine vehicle.
So the predicament is profound.
It is. The only way the light kingdom could defend itself and trap the forces of darkness was by sacrificing some of its own essence, the light particles, to serve as bait and armor. The universe, in effect, is a shield made of divine souls.
And here is where the Manichaean Genesis story becomes truly distinct and, frankly, chilling. The creation of Adam and Eve, humanity itself, was not the benevolent plan of the Father of Greatness.
Not at all. It was entirely a demonic stratagem.
A stratagem? What for?
It was a conscious, calculated attempt by the forces of darkness to perpetually imprison the light particles. The chief demon, often referred to as the Prince of Darkness, and his consort created humanity specifically to hold the maximum amount of light in the most secure vessel possible.
The physical body.
The physical body, which is matter. But how did they ensure the light remained trapped generation after generation?
Through reproduction.
Through the biological imperative.
Yeah.
Sexual reproduction. The demons set up humanity so that the light would be continuously bound and imprisoned within new generations of evil, physical matter through the act of procreation.
So the cycle of life, which most religions celebrate, is viewed in Manichaeism as the mechanism for extending the soul's prison sentence.
Exactly. Every birth is a cosmic tragedy that binds more light to darkness.
That's a dark view.
It's incredibly dark. The Prince of Darkness designed the human body and the drive to reproduce to be the ultimate trap, ensuring that the liberated light fragments would be immediately replaced by new ones. This dark origin story provides the total justification for the extreme asceticism we will discuss.
Of course. If the body and reproduction are instruments of the Prince of Darkness, then the mission of the Manichaean faith is nothing less than a cosmic rescue project.
To halt that cycle and free every last particle of trapped light, it's an architecture that justifies everything. The suffering we see in the world is explained not as divine punishment or testing, but as the predictable result of living inside a corrupted demonic shell.
And it offers an intense sense of purpose.
A huge purpose. Every Manichaean was an active participant in this cosmic war, tasked with identifying and liberating the light within themselves and around them through disciplined gnosis.
That terrifying cosmology necessitates a radical lifestyle. If the body is a demonic prison designed to perpetuate the captivity of light, then salvation requires a rigorous, total rejection of the material world.
Which led to the famous two-tiered church structure, the elect and the hearers.
And the distinction was absolute, right? And essential for the operational success of the faith.
It was. The elect were the spiritual elite, the dedicated few who lived lives of perfect asceticism, entirely focused on the cosmic mission of liberating light particles.
And their vows were incredibly stringent, going far beyond typical monasticism of the era. They had 3 cardinal vows, often called the 3 seals. Let's break those down.
Okay, so first you have the seal of the breast. This relating to morality, prohibiting all sinful thoughts and intentions, but most dramatically, it enforced absolute celibacy.
Which was non-negotiable for the elect.
Absolutely not. Because, as we discussed, sexual reproduction was the primary mechanism of the kingdom of darkness to trap new souls. The elect had to completely halt their participation in that cycle.
Then the seal of the hands.
The seal of the hands prohibited all manual labor, enforcing absolute poverty, no ownership, and crucially, any activity that might involve harming or manipulating matter.
So this prohibition on labor, was it just practical so they could rely on the community for sustenance? Or was it more than that?
It was practical, but it was also deeply cosmological. Since all manipulation of the physical world involves engaging with matter, which is darkness, the elect could not pollute themselves by working the land, building, or trading. They had to maintain perfect physical passivity to maintain the purity of the light inside them.
And finally, the seal of the mouth.
This governed their speech, and perhaps most famously, their diet. Their diet was strictly vegan, no meat, no dairy, no wine.
And this wasn't just healthy eating, this was tactical warfare against darkness.
It was metaphysical engineering. The Manichaean belief system held that light particles were scattered everywhere, including in plant life, but were highly concentrated in certain fruits and vegetables, especially those that didn't require pulling the root from the ground, thus minimizing the harm to the trapped light.
And animal products.
Animal products were seen as having highly concentrated darkness, especially meat and dairy, due to the violence inherent in their production and the nature of the animal soul.
So the elect were pure channels, designed to consume the purest light particles from plants and separate them from the surrounding matter, which they would then expel in a purified form.
It makes the entire digestive process a sacred cosmological ritual. It truly does.
But this level of asceticism is unsustainable for a population-level faith.
Right, which is why the hearers, the auditors, were so crucial. They were the lay followers, the vast majority of the community.
So what was the hearers' role in this cosmic drama? They couldn't live the life of the elect, yet they were committed to the faith.
Their role was one of support, resource provision, and protection. By preparing and providing the specific, pure, plant-based food for the elect, the hearers indirectly participated in that cosmic rescue project.
And this is where the Kellis letters give us such a profound, humanizing glimpse, right? These documents, recovered from Egypt, they detail the lives of 4th century Manichaean lay followers.
Yes, they paint a picture far removed from isolated monasticism. The letters show hearers, like the merchant Macarios and his family, were deeply integrated, successful business people.
They weren't just hermits.
Not at all. They were trading textiles, olive oil, and complex books. They managed businesses, traveled widely, and engaged with the local economy, all while faithfully ensuring that the traveling elect were supplied with pure provisions. They could maintain a worldly life, even participating in commerce, provided they supported the channel of salvation.
That dual function, a sophisticated, highly ascetic core supported by an economically vibrant lay community, is the sustainable model that allowed Manichaeism to survive and spread.
And their spiritual discipline was comprehensive, even for the hearers. It regulated every action and moment. Prayer, for example, was obligatory 4 times a day.
Time to key celestial moments.
Exactly. At noon, late in the afternoon, after sunset, and then 3 hours later. And the direction of prayer was always toward the light.
Always. This meant orienting toward the sun, the moon, or if neither was visible, which I imagine was often the case in underground communities during persecution, what did they do?
They would orient toward the north, which was conceptually the throne of the Father of Greatness, the Light King.
And the ceremonies themselves were detailed. They included ceremonial purification, sometimes with water, sometimes with some other substance if water was scarce, which shows adaptability, and then the obligatory prostrations. Why 12 of them?
The number 12 was rich with symbolism in Manichaean cosmology, often relating to the 12 celestial powers or the 12 luminaries that helped regulate the cosmic machinery of salvation. The prayer ritual, with its 12 prostrations, was a micro-enactment of the cosmic purification process.
And the fasting was equally intense and astronomically tied.
Yes. Everyone fasted on the first day of the week in honor of the sun. The elect added fasting on the second day for the moon. And all members observed a strict fast breaking only after sunset, during the 2 days after every new moon.
And there's a big annual one too, right?
A massive annual fast, the Bema Fast, leading up to the Great Bema Festival, which commemorated Mani's passion and transition to the light world.
It's a life lived according to a precise cosmic clock. Every act is a deliberate part of a metaphysical engineering project to purify the soul and liberate light.
It's no wonder it attracted intellectuals, because ignorance in this system was the equivalent of sin. Salvation was achieved through gnosis, through knowing the true nature of the universe.
And that intellectual bent meant prolific literary production. Even today, the complex surviving Coptic works, like the Kephaliah, reveal a sophisticated theology.
And their artistic tradition confirmed this intellectual strength. That Central Asian Uyghur example is key here. In the Uyghur Khaganate, we find illuminated book fragments showing a West Asian artistic style alongside temple banners and wall paintings done in a Chinese style.
Which shows incredible adaptability.
It confirms that the faith was adept at presenting its message visually, whether in a delicate vertical codex or a massive temple mural, while rigorously preserving its core theological function and intellectual complexity across vastly different cultural zones.
The genius of the Manichaean structure, a universalizing message, a highly literate founder, and a self-sustaining church model meant that it spread incredibly fast.
It truly sprinted across borders along the established trade routes, hitting the Roman West, North Africa, Egypt, and shooting eastward through Persia and Central Asia, all the way into China.
And to succeed in such diverse regions, Manichaeism had to be the master of syncretism.
Oh yes, as its core Aramaic scriptures were translated into Iranian languages like Middle Persian and Parthian, the deities of light were seamlessly fused with local religious figures.
Let's dig into that. How did they manage it with Zoroastrianism, which was the state religion of the Sasanian Empire where Mani started?
It was a very clever theological move. For instance, the highest Manichaean deity of light, Abaturabi, the father of greatness, was often equated with Zoroaster.
And Zoroaster was a primordial figure.
Yes, in some Zoroastrian traditions, Zoroaster was the primordial figure of infinite time or space from which both Ormazd good and Ahriman evil emerged. By making this connection, Mani elevated his supreme god into the most ancient, recognized figure of the local cosmology.
And what about the original man?
The primordial figure known as Nashakameya, or the original man, who was the first divine sacrifice sent to combat darkness, was equated with Ormazd Bey, the Zoroastrian high god. This allowed Manichaeans to absorb vast swaths of Zoroastrian mythos, while still teaching Mani's ultimate radical dualism.
And that syncretism continued all the way into East Asia. In Chinese Buddhism, there's that fascinating linguistic and theological connection made through the Aramaic term, korya.
Korya translates as the call, the spiritual summons emanating from the world of light, trying to awaken and rescue the trapped soul within the body.
Okay.
In the Chinese language Manichaean scriptures, that existential call was identified with Guanyin, the Bodhisattva of compassion, or Avalokiteshvara.
That is a stunning piece of theological adaptation. It essentially made the Manichaean cosmic rescue mission accessible and appealing within the Mahayana Buddhist framework of compassionate intervention.
However, this success placed Manichaeism in direct, violent conflict with powerful established interests: the Roman state, the Christian church, and the Zoroastrian clergy in Persia.
The persecution began early, and it was driven by both theological threat and geopolitical paranoia.
Very much so. The Roman retaliation was particularly vicious, culminating in Emperor Diocletian's infamous edict in 302 CE, the rescript to Julianus.
And that edict is a critical historical document because it lays bare the specific Roman fear.
Oh, Diocletian was explicit. He labeled Manichaeans as new and unexpected monstrosities, and most significantly denounced them as agents of the hostile Persian race.
We have to remember the geopolitical context here. The Roman Empire and the Sasanian Empire were engaged in constant, brutal warfare.
Exactly. So Diocletian's persecution was less about theology and more about preventing perceived espionage and subversion from a foreign enemy.
He literally says it in the edict, doesn't he?
He does. The edict explicitly states the fear that the Manichaeans would, quote, infect the modest and tranquil Roman people with the damnable customs and perverse laws of the Persians. The religion was criminalized as an act of treason and foreign infiltration.
And the punishments reflected that existential fear. The edict ordered that the leaders and teachers of the faith, along with their abominable writings, be burnt in the flames.
And followers, depending on their social status and willingness to recant, faced capital punishment or immediate confiscation of their property and forced labor in the mines.
This was a pivotal moment in Roman history. It marked one of the first state-sanctioned persecutions aimed specifically at the doctrine and adherents of a named religious group.
Yes, rather than the general demand for public worship of imperial deities. It was an anti-foreign, anti-heretical campaign of unprecedented severity that ultimately drove the faith underground in the West.
But the critical intellectual battleground in the West was fought not by legions, but by rhetoric, led by St. Augustine of Hippo.
Augustine's involvement is perhaps the greatest irony of Manichaean history. He was a hearer for 9 years, deeply committed before his conversion to Christianity.
And his later career as the architect of Latin orthodoxy was defined by his struggle against the faith he had once followed.
Completely.
So what attracted a brilliant young mind like Augustine to Manichaeism in the first place?
2 things, primarily. First, its claim to rationalism. Augustine was intellectually sophisticated. He found the Christian demand for blind faith frustrating. Manichaeism promised gnosis, a logical, rational explanation for the entire universe, including the problem of evil.
And the second thing?
The elegant solution to the problem of evil itself. Augustine was horrified by the idea that an omnipotent good God could be responsible for the evil in the world. Mani's teaching that evil was a separate, co-eternal substance was profoundly satisfying and relieved the perfect God of the burden of sin.
And Augustine's eventual rejection of this doctrine and his powerful refutations, defining evil not as a substance but as a privation of good, became essential to establishing Christian orthodoxy.
And was devastating to Manichaeism's survival in the Mediterranean world. The faith almost entirely disappeared from the West by the 5th century.
However, while it was being crushed in the West, it was flourishing in the East.
It was. Manichaeism achieved its political zenith in Central Asia, where it actually became the state religion of the Uyghur Khaganate for a significant period.
That imperial patronage would have provided stability, resources, and freedom from persecution.
It did, and it allowed their intellectual and artistic traditions to thrive. But political fortunes are fickle. The fall of the Khaganate in 840 CE proved fatal.
And suddenly the Manichaeans in China were exposed. They had always been viewed with suspicion there, right?
Yes. Emperor Xuanzong had banned Chinese citizens from converting as early as 732 CE, fearing it was a heretical religion that confused the populace by masquerading as a foreign form of Buddhism.
So following the Uyghur collapse,
Manichaean temples were closed across China. They were viewed not just as a religious threat, but as a symbol of foreign arrogance that was no longer protected by a Central Asian superpower. So whether the attack came from Roman xenophobia, Christian intellectual rigor, or Chinese political nationalism, the universal, uncompromising nature of Manichaeism ultimately sealed its fate across the globe.
despite being officially wiped out across the major empires by the 10th century, the dualistic philosophy refused to die. This brings us to one of the most persistent and complicated historical puzzles. The alleged chain of heresy linking Mani's faith to later medieval dualistic sects in Europe.
The difficulty here is proving direct lineage versus shared philosophical affinity. Medieval inquisitors were notorious for indiscriminately labeling any dualist group, whether in the Balkans or southern France, as Manichaean.
It was a polemical insult.
Exactly. It was designed to link them to a reviled, crushed foreign enemy.
Okay, so let's look at the candidates for the spiritual lineage, starting with the Paulicians, who emerged in Byzantium and Armenia between the 7th and 9th centuries.
The Paulicians were certainly dualists who rejected the material world and its associated institutions, much like the Manichaeans. Peter of Sicily described their doctrine as a reformed and simplified Manichaeism.
But they were different.
Very different in practice. Paulicians actively avoided Manichaean canonical texts and focused almost exclusively on the New Testament writings. If they were influenced by Mani, it was likely an evolution or simplification that stripped away Mani's complex, named cosmology, to be less offensive to a Christianized world.
Then we move to the Bogomils, a major dualist movement that flourished in the Balkans from the 10th to the 14th centuries. This is where the crucial theological distinction comes into play, isn't it?
This is a vital point for you, the listener, to grasp. Mani taught radical dualism. Light and darkness are uncreated, co-eternal equals.
Right.
The Bogomils, however, held a moderate dualism. For them, Satan, whom they often called Sataniel, was the elder son of God, a fallen angel.
So, Sataniel was subordinate to God the Father, but was he still the creator of the material world?
Yes. The Bogomils believed that Sataniel was the creator of the visible physical world, whereas God the Father created the invisible spiritual world. Therefore, the material world is evil, but its creator, Sataniel, is a subordinate created being who rebelled, not an eternal co-equal substance.
Which is a fundamental theological departure from Mani.
A huge one.
Nevertheless, the Bogomils practiced rigid moral austerity, rejected all material objects used by the Orthodox Church, such as churches, icons, and the cross, and claimed the exclusive right to the name Christians.
They were the spiritual elite of the Balkans for centuries.
Finally, in Western Europe, we have the Cathars, or Albigensians, who were annihilated in France during the 12th to 14th centuries.
And interestingly, the Cathars seem to have reverted to the radical dualism of Mani, believing in two eternal principles.
But they lacked the specific details, right? They didn't refer to Mani, they didn't celebrate the Bema festival, and they didn't recite the Manichaean myths of the light entities.
Exactly. It's highly unlikely the Cathars were reading Manichaean texts directly. The most probable hypothesis is that the dualistic philosophy, which provided such an elegant answer to the problem of evil, was preserved indirectly.
You mean that Augustine, by writing dozens of tracts refuting Mani, inadvertently preserved the radical dualist ideas within the heart of Christian theological literature,
allowing later dissidents like the Cathars to rediscover and adopt the blueprint of two eternal principles. That is the ultimate irony. The greatest enemy of Manichaeism ensured its intellectual survival.
The term Manichaean then became a philosophical shorthand, which brings us to its modern figurative usage.
Yes, today we use Manichaean critically as a synonym for simplistic dualism.
Right. It's a term used to describe a worldview that reduces complex historical, political, or ethical realities into a black and white struggle between absolute good and absolute evil, often ignoring nuance or gray areas.
We hear it frequently in foreign policy commentary. When a politician or analyst reduces a complex, multi-sided conflict to a fight between us, the forces of light, and them, the forces of absolute evil, critics often call that perspective Manichaean paranoia.
Because it suggests a failure to deal with the messy reality of mixed motives and flawed actors.
Precisely. And this philosophical framework even translates into profound psychological insights. Mani's insights into the light-dark dichotomy resonate strikingly with 20th century depth psychology, particularly the work of Carl Jung.
How does this ancient cosmology mirror Jungian thought?
Well, Mani's description of the transcendent light or spirit trapped within the darkness of matter mirrors Jung's structural concepts of the psyche. The light, the divine spark, is conceptually very similar to Jung's self, the integrated divine totality of the personality.
And the darkness, the chaotic, ignorant material realm that seeks to keep the light contained, that sounds exactly like Jung's concept of the shadow.
Absolutely. The shadow contains the repressed, unacknowledged, and often chaotic aspects of the self. The entire Manichaean spiritual mission, freeing the light and purifying the soul through gnosis.
It's conceptually analogous to Jung's psychological goal of individuation.
Exactly. Individuation being the process of achieving wholeness by consciously confronting and integrating these opposing forces, the self and the shadow, within the psyche, rather than remaining ignorant of them.
So Mani sought salvation through knowledge of cosmic reality.
And Jung sought psyche transformation through knowledge of the internal personal self. In both cases, the path to purity or wholeness requires the recognition and separation of the light from the darkness that contains it. That is a truly powerful legacy for a religion that was supposedly wiped out.
Mani's dark but elegant architecture for the universe still gives us a framework for understanding the internal battles we face every day.
Our deep dive has revealed Manichaeism as a sophisticated, intellectual, and globally ambitious faith that provided a definitive, if stark and complex, answer to humanity's most persistent question, the origin of evil.
And its eventual decline was not a failure of internal logic or widespread appeal. It was persecuted relentlessly because its universal solution was so uncompromisingly radical that it inevitably offended the core tenets of every competing orthodoxy, whether Christian, Zoroastrian, or Confucian.
And it challenged the ultimate authority of every major empire it sought to enter. It was a geopolitical threat as much as a theological one.
Yet, thanks to the recovery of those fragmented materials, the Coptic discourses, the illuminated ogre codices, the letters of the merchant Macarios, and even Augustine's angry refutations,
we can still reconstruct the voices of the people of the light and appreciate the profound, complex spiritual landscape they created.
Mani's radical dualism, which taught that our divine light is inherently trapped in evil matter created by a separate demonic force, implied a kind of determinism. Our fate is determined by the primordial collision between light and darkness. Our moral struggle is a cosmic inevitability.
And this stands in powerful contrast to its great rival faith, Zoroastrianism, which, despite featuring its own cosmic struggle between Ormuzd and Ahriman, placed enormous emphasis on human free will and personal responsibility.
Urging the believer to actively choose good over evil every single day.
Yes.
This raises an important question for you, the listener, to wrestle with as you continue your own journey of knowledge. When trying to account for the existence of suffering and evil in the world, is it ultimately more comforting, or perhaps more dangerous, to believe that our moral struggle is dictated by eternal cosmic forces beyond our control, as Mani taught, or to accept the terrifying burden of creation and choice solely through human free will, as the monistic traditions and Zoroastrianism insisted?
What stands out to you is the ultimate cost of finding such a satisfying yet radical answer to the problem of evil?
Thanks for tuning into Sonara's Deep Dive. Don't forget to subscribe so you won't miss any of our future episodes. I bring you fresh content every week. Thanks for listening.